Okay, welcome back. This time to Chapter 7 again, but risk management. Budget we already covered. Budget is a risk, like the schedule is a risk, like procurement is a risk, like quality is a risk, but this one is focused just on risk. Okay, so let's get started. So, project risk management. All projects have risk, right? I used to have fun. Show me a project without risk, and I'll show you a blah, 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 boom, right? All projects have risk. At a minimum, the project has a risk that it does not accomplish its stated objective. And so, as you'll see, there are many ways, there are many secondary risks that will pop up over the course of a project. And if not carefully considered, it'll create this high probability of cost or schedule overruns, failure to complete scope, quality standards, etc. So, potential risks should be identified by all members of your team. Any potential risk identified by anyone, record it, right? Regardless of whether you think it's important or not, or the group thinks it's important or not, it could develop and be significant. So, all potential risks should be identified by brainstorming or doing stakeholder interviews, especially key stakeholders, decision makers, and then documented and followed up. Speaking of stakeholders, right? Risk takers are really just gamblers. They say no company ever made money without taking a risk. So you've got to take a risk. The question is, where is the acceptable risk, right? Or where's the risk threshold? So I have three definitions of risks on this stakeholder risk on this slide that you really should be aware of. A stakeholder appetite is the degree of uncertainty. That's in the bottom left. You're willing to accept that level of uncertainty to move the business forward. And then there's risk tolerance, right? It's somewhere above your normal day-to-day degree of risk, of uncertainty that you're willing to take. It's how much can you really withstand, though, right? And the risk threshold, bam, that's the wall. That's where you cannot take it any longer. You will never go beyond that. It's unacceptable to go over the threshold, right? We want to understand those with our stakeholders. I've used the term uncertainty several times. That is, in its simplest form, the definition of risk. Risk is an uncertainty. There are things that might happen. We just don't know if they will happen. And they are both positive and negative. They are threats and also opportunities. Now, through this course, we'll look at these processes, the planning, identification, qualitative and quantitative analysis, response planning, control, and then some more on the risk register. Okay. Before I jump into that, though, be aware of some of these key terms. Variability risk is uncertainty about something of high variability, like weather, right? Weather is a variability risk. Ambiguity risk is when we have imperfect knowledge. Well, gosh, remember the definition of a project is an uncertainty and it's time bound, right? A definite start and end date. Well, the fact that it's unique. A project is unique and time bound. Well, imagine, because it's unique, there will be ambiguity risk. We expect that. We don't have perfect knowledge. That's what we're developing by the time we accomplish our output, our final deliverable. And then there's project resilience, right? There will be emerging risks along the way. Sometimes we call these unknowable unknowns. I really don't like that term. But yes, and they're recognized after they occur, and they're tackled by developing project resilience. You can have contingency reserves and flexible processes, and you can empower and trust people to be proactive, right? You can have triggers like warning signals, etc. That's how you modify and absorb and ensure your project is resilient. Okay, some key terms to know. So planning. Planning defines how to do risk management in all the processes, in identifying risks, in doing qualitative and quantitative analysis, in controlling risks, watching for triggers, defining risk owners, right? This is defining it end to end in risk management planning. So we begin risk management planning early and finish early, right? Because risks are inherent to every project. This is going to ensure the degree, type, and visibility of the risks are proportionate to the risks and the stakeholders, right? Some risks matter more than others. Not every risk today is equal. Doesn't mean we stop watching. And remember I said you put every risk down on paper because they can change in priority, in probability of, and impact over time. So we want to put everything down, but no, they're not all the same today, right? And so we want to ensure our effort is proportional to the risk itself, okay? And we can use things like the project charter. We've talked about the project plan, other project documents to develop our risk management plan. We can even do data analysis. Data analysis would include the stakeholder analysis that we just talked about, the risk appetites, the risk tolerances, and the risk thresholds, understanding them while you're producing your output, which is this risk management plan. This is your methodology, your approach to transitioning the framework of, say, the PMBOK guide into detailed, step-by-step, here's how I'm going to do all the processes in risk management, along with the roles and responsibilities. Now, in planning, a slide in the book talks about some types of risks are preventable, some are strategy risks, some are external. I like the black swan theory, right? Which is a metaphor, really, which describes an event that comes as a surprise. It has a major effect and is often inappropriately rationalized after the fact based on hindsight, right? So the term comes from an ancient saying in Europe that presumed black swans did not exist, a saying that became reinterpreted to teach a lesson that just because you don't think it can happen, it likely can. When Europeans, there were only white swans in Europe, hence their thought. There's no such thing as a black swan till they got to Australia. And later they learned, there are black swans, right? And so it challenges our expectation of rare events, of probability and impact, how it can change over time, and even our own personal biases, right? So this black swan approach refers to unexpected events or of large magnitude and consequence. Such events, considered oftentimes outliers, right, or extremes, can play a big role in the success of your project. In fact, I think all risks are identifiable with common sense and a little intellect. Examples often given of black swan events are the rise of the internet, the personal computer, World War I, the dissolution of the Soviet Union, or the 9/11 terrorist attacks on the U.S. But I frankly think that all of those were fairly predictable and could have been planned against. The internet developed over eons. Okay. Now, when we identify risks, one way to do that is the Delphi technique. And the Delphi technique is a process used to arrive at a group opinion by surveying a panel of experts. It's a group opinion of experts. So what you'll do is you'll send out a survey to an expert. You'll assure them it's anonymous. You'll get their results. You'll tabulate them with the other experts. You will send it back to them to reconfirm the now collective expertise. And when they do, you have Delphi technique. It is found that experts are more likely to give you their true, valid, honest opinion if they have anonymity. That in a group, because of peer pressure, etc., they don't like to offer it openly, and they will hold back an opinion. The name gets this technique gets its name from the Oracle Delphi of Greece literature. She was a priestess at the Temple of Apollo in ancient Greece, and the Oracle Delphi was famous for giving cryptic predictions and guidance of both the city-states and of individuals, hence expert predictions of the future. Now, when we identify risks, we want to be aware. One way to do it is by studying flowcharts, right? We want to study flowcharts for risk issues, right? For supply chain issues. A type of flowchart is also known as a SIPOC, and I have a picture there. It stands for suppliers, inputs, processes, outputs, and customers, and that's SIPOC. Sometimes I've even heard it as COPUS, which is SIPOC backwards, where you start with the customer. Other tools that you can use are histograms shown on the left. In the middle, a Pareto diagram, which really is just a histogram, just rank ordering. And then you can do the cause and effect diagram, which is all goes by other names. The YY diagram, the 5 Ys, the fishbone diagram, the Ishikawa diagram. It's all the same. It's about root cause analysis and diagramming that. Another tool you can use is SWOT, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Notice that opportunities and threats are very much what this conversation is focused on. Risks are seen as threats, yes. They're also seen as opportunities, and we want to identify both. We want to pursue and maximize opportunities. These are generally external to the project. And we want to avoid the threats, also external to the project, right? Now we will take a break there and come back with qualitative analysis.